Hey guys, so we're going to continue our game of Ballads at Midnight. So this will be part 2, and we'll just continue where we left off. Night seems never-ending as I creep through the estate. The vampire has shown himself since our earlier squabble, though his absence does little to soothe my nerves. As any prey animal knows, the deadliest predator is when you don't see coming. Exhaustion weighs against my eyes, but adrenaline keeps me on edge, pulsing through my veins like a heavy drum. The slight shift of wind-blown curtains makes me jump. I keep expecting those moonlit eyes to be watching when I turn. But the shadows are always barren, devoid of vampires. Does he truly mean to sulk for the remainder of the night? I suppose I should count my blessings while I can. As I explore, I notice how each successive chamber is as spotless and immaculately tidy, aside from the furniture I disturbed, which I take the time to straighten. I uncover an abundance of books crowding the shelves on various surfaces that contain an array of technical topics, including geography, astronomy, invocation, and mathematics. They're all dog-eared and full of notes. Don't tell me he's read every book in the estate. I can't panic yet. I can still narrow this down. Assuming he takes time to clean his most frequented spaces, I ought to pay attention to what is and isn't covered in dust. Yet even locating a single cobweb presents a unique challenge. I set a book down, running my hand across the marble exterior of an engraved fireplace. Even this is pristine, unmarred by old ashes and liquoring flames. The nearby fire iron, at least, is an encouraging sight. I pick it up to give it a gentle swing, testing the weight. I wince when my arm throbs in protest. Ah! I'll have to remind myself to use my non-dominant hand. The fire iron has a dull tip that's unlikely to pierce skin, but a decisive strike should send anyone reeling, even an immortal creature of the night. Of course, pissing him off by whacking him in the head is a last resort. I'm more interested in jabbing the fire iron into the ledge outside and use it as a handhold to climb my way up. The idea may sound absurd, but it could work. I won't know until I try. Although, even if I successfully scale the ledge, I still have to defeat the moat somehow. My gaze wanders across the chamber. If someone is wealthy enough to build a castle, they usually enjoy surrounding themselves with larger-than-life portraits. One would think that I'd have found a big enough painting to pry off the wall and ride across the moat by now, but the decor is tragically modest. As I move to lower my arms, a golden glint reflects off the dark metal of the fire iron. I pivot my shoulders with cautious hope. There, thin rays of dawn's light gleam through the drawn curtains. My body practically moves on its own, march to the window and wrench the curtains open. Morning daylight fills the chamber. I'd never been happier to see the sun peeking over the mountains like an old friend. Though, the moment the curtains shift, a small beige shape moves with it across the floor. A rat! I hate rats. I've always been scared of them. When I hop away from the shape, I observe how it doesn't continue to move. I bend to inspect it, using the fire iron for support. It just a furled scrap of parchment blown and frail with age. Yet it's an unusual sight considering how free of dirt and clutter the rest of the room is. Would you look at that? He's finally missed the spot. I suppose the vampire doesn't enjoy cleaning under the curtains, lest the sun sneak up on him unawares. I turn the paper over, noting a smudge of charcoal rubbing off on my thumb. Part of a larger drawing. Maybe one of those enormous portraits I'm sorely missing. I'm sure it's worthless, but no harm holding on to it. Perhaps the vampire will appreciate my help in tidying up. I try and fail to hold back a yawn that makes my entire body shudder. The bloom of sunlight fixed in the sky, though refreshing to see, also serves as a reminder of how much time has passed, of how little sleep I've gotten. There won't be a better time to get some rest. I look about the chamber one final time to be surrounded by various furnishings in a mystifying sort of torture. Despite how all those nights of sleeping on the ground have left me yearning for the comfort of a cushion, I know I can't sleep here. The vampire needs only to close the curtains to accost me in my sleep. Back outside I go. The days are long this time of year. I'll have plenty of time to try climbing the ledge when I wake. I'll grab a decorative pillow from a sofa. It's not much, but it will make my cobblestone bed a little more bearable. I retrace my steps through the estate and I practically collapse into the first ring of sunlight I find. I wake from a dreamless, restless slumber into the cold of evening. Sitting up with a jolt, I scan the sky with mounting dismay. Sundown again already? How could I have slept for so long? The clenching ache in my bone and blossoming bruises on my skin reveal the answer to my unspoken question. My stamina is spent. I won't be able to run the way I did yesterday. No, damn it. It feels like the very shadows are reaching for me, streaking across the ground like long claws. And speaking of claws, from the shade nearby, the vampire looks down at me with flat displeasure. My fingers curl instinctively around the fire iron. You're still here on the ground, no less. Where else would I be? Why, I figured you would have climbed onto the roof, run some mental calculus to determine the best angle of approach, and then leapt into the moat to swim to freedom. A beat passes as I stare at him. Yes, that would be very practical, but anyone who tries it would surely splatter against the rocky ledge below. Perhaps, and even if they made it to the water, they would discover the alligators in the moat. Alligators? Really? No. What the hell? I think I liked you more when you were menacing me about what crimes I'd committed. She dislikes the taste of her own medicine. Shocking. He folds his arms behind his back as he paces around me. I'm very aware that he can grab and drag me into the shadows if he so desires, but he's choosing not to. You never did tell me what you did to get sent here. You're right, I didn't. We stare at each other now, sharing an ugly pause. But I apologise for my behaviour last night and for making a mess. Truly? He looks as though he's expecting a punchline. Yes, truly, I don't know what it's like to own an estate, but I'm sure it's dreadful having someone run through it. Indeed. Will you tell me what you're planning to do with my fire iron? What, this old thing? I could lie to him, but I see little point in it. While I've developed a skill for enthralling an audience with tall tales, it's not as if I can trick them into believing my stories are real. Unless they're children, of course. And the pacing vampire hasn't seemed terribly childlike thus far. In any case, I'm not a good liar. When one is not a good liar, honesty is by far the better policy. If you leapt at me, I would have tried to swing it at you. But I also thought I could use it as a handhold to get over the ledge. I cannot begrudge you for your caution against me. But using a fire iron as a handhold, really? The ledge is made of solid stone. It's old, isn't it? Surely the stone has weathered down over the years. It most certainly has not. You would begrudge me for trying everything at my disposal? I might if you ruined my fire iron in the process. You need not try such inventive tactics if you agreed to barter with me. Right, yes, about that. I'll have you know I'm extremely well-travelled. How informed are you about recent history and new discoveries throughout the world? What makes you think I would be interested in such things? You mentioned you were open to trading knowledge. I remember it like it was, well, yesterday. Every 2 years I receive a new guest at my estate. Each guest has some capacity to tell me news of the outside world. I had previously offered their freedom in exchange, but hearing news of the outside world loses appeal when one is not welcome to participate in it. But some men and women have nothing else to give. Surely you would not deprive this opportunity from a future guest when you have more to offer than this. My loot feels heavy against my back. What else can I offer that amounts to the price of my freedom? Please, I can't give it to you. He scoffs at me. Just when I thought you were seeing sense. But I may yet be amenable, as you have been to me. Last night, I hadn't fully understood that you play music as your primary profession. Not at first. My recent slew of guests have been cutthroats and highwaymen. I forgot that I've also housed scientists and artists. I presume you must be good at your craft as such. You need your loot more than I do. The sudden and unexpected empathy leaves me speechless. He takes my silence as permission to continue. I ought to also admit, it has been a very long time since someone has told me no. Irritated me to hear, but it is within your right to say. Forgive me for making it seem otherwise. As if our cordial conversation hadn't been astonishing enough, the vampire inclines his head towards me. You're forgiven, but wouldn't everyone have fought you to the bitter end? I imagine there must have been several no's sprinkled in there. He chuckles wryly. When properly bound and restrained, the capacity to fight to the bitter end is quite limited. I expect this lends itself to making the guests more amenable to negotiation and to giving me anything I should desire. Oh, he really wasn't expecting me to break free of my bounds. Enough of this matter. I propose we approach this from a new angle. What do you want, mortal? If freedom has no strong appeal for you, perhaps you'd be more interested in power, in immortality? I don't miss the citrine way he says that last word. No, I'm fairly sure I do want my freedom. I can't imagine what price I'd have to pay for the other two. My stomach growls. But I could do with some food. Food? Food, even if I get out there. Food, even if I get out of here. The nearest village is miles away. I won't get far on an empty stomach. You would ask a vampire to feed you? A marvellously modest start to our negotiative relationship. Your empty stomach shall be filled. I should have a surplus of blood lying around here somewhere. I'm joking. I'm not so old that I've forgotten what mortals eat. Come with me. Begins to lead the way. I struggle to my feet, but have enough difficulty steadying myself that he pauses and turns to observe me. I end up using the fire iron to help me maintain my balance like a metal walking stick. You look pitiful. I'm sure. My apologies for not being the picture of grace after a 9-day hike with slave-driving guardsmen. Now, where exactly do you plan on taking me? The vampire is kind enough to slow his pace and walk with me in parallel tandem, though he stays in the shadows and I'm in the waning light. You are astoundingly paranoid. I've taken you somewhere I could feed you, like we agreed. You mean to feed on me, don't you? No. He says it with such disgust that I gape at him, taken aback. Oh, don't even begin to act offended. Have you looked at yourself? Filthy, dragged through prison cells and mud. Your taste most certainly will be foul. I bite back a retort about how I'm supposed to taste, more importantly. You're really not going to kill and eat me then? Eat me ever? Covered in muck as you are, I have no desire to touch you. You doubt me? I don't know, it sounds like you attacked me the moment I'm... No, it sounds like you'll attack me the moment I'm clean. And I can't get a read on you. Maybe it's your fetish to lure your victims into a false sense of security? How easily you remark on a stranger's fetishes. I had my suspicions that you were a traveller, but I'm certain now you should not... I'm certain now you could not have been raised in Illuvia. Ah yes, beautiful Illuvia, kingdom of the ungrateful prudes. They don't appreciate me here at all. I'm quite certain they did not. You may have a seat and wait here, though I can't guarantee the chairs won't bite. Very funny. He smirks a little at that, though he turns it as if to hide it. The kitchen is nearby. I won't be long. I caught a glimpse of his kitchen during my exploration last night. I noticed it was stocked with well-loved pans and utensils, but I never imagined that meant he used them with any frequency. I expect you'll stay put, woeful wounded as you are. If you wander off and I can't find you, I'll have to deposit your meal into the moat. Ah, very well. I'll tame my adventurous spirits for the time being. Wouldn't want your imaginary alligators to be fed in my place. You're catching on. Good girl. True to his word, the vampire returns in short order. He sets a tray loaded with roasted roots and grilled perch before me. A simple enough meal, but one of the most beautiful sights I've seen in recent memory. It's not a plate of blood. It is not. Shall I switch it out for you? No, I'll be quiet. I reach for a fork and slice into the fish, excited to save my first meal in days. I take the first bite and... it's awful. Some of the prison slop tastes better than this burnt, over-salted tragedy. Even stranger, I taste hints of cinnamon, garlic and coffee. At this point, I have no idea what I'm eating, but I'm too hungry to stop. I must have outdone myself. Don't forget to breathe. Mortals need air in their lungs, I hear. It is delicious, isn't it? My fork pauses against my lips. God, it's really not. Be honest, or best meal I've had. Lie through my teeth. God, it's really not. God, it's really not. This is one of the worst cooked fish I've had in my life, but it tastes better than starvation. The vampire regards me with an unreadable expression. His next words are as slow as they are measured. I've served more than 100 guests in my lifetime. Not a single one of them has described it as, I quote, better than starvation. Without constructive criticism, how will you improve? Surely you will not begrudge me for being honest. The vampire watches me finish the next bite, eyes narrowed. No matter, I care not what you think of my cooking. His lower lip is unmistakably jutted into a small pout, but I don't get to see it for long. Now that I have given you a meal, you will now give me something I want in return. Why do you keep insisting on these inane little trades? He shrugs his shoulders with a touch of derision. It's in my nature. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. No service without a cost. Fine, vampire. Can I interest you in a song? He arches a brow and says nothing, but I can tell I've piqued his interest. I've seen your books. All technically no whimsy. It must have been some text since you last heard a compelling story. I shoved my lute into my arms, strumming it once for intrigue. A tempting little preview. Very well, Bard. A song in exchange for the meal. I lower my gaze to my lute, heaving a sigh I didn't know I was holding. God, I just have to play a single song. It's a simple request, one I've fulfilled thousands of times over in several dozen taverns, but the thrill of anticipation is making my fingers jitter. Just yesterday I was grimly certain that I would never perform again. Now I'm performing for the vampire who was supposed to tear me to shreds? I trace a fingernail over a single string. Then I pluck at each string sequentially, testing and tuning in tune. And then I begin to play. The vampire, who until now has a perpetual proclivity for pacing, slows and pauses mid-step to watch me with his hands folded on a writing table. My voice turns into the best weapon I've ever wielded, stronger and sharper than any knife or fire iron. Notes trickle from my lungs, rush to my throat and pour from my lips into a song that floods the room with a tale most forlorn. The ballad I've chosen starts melancholic. It follows a young man as life takes from him. His father is the first to be taken, life cut short by plague. His betrothed, the next, abandoned him for a wealthier man. When he's brutally mugged and left for dead, he feels as though his last remnants of peace have been torn to shreds. He finds himself alone, left behind, forgotten. His mind is swallowed whole by rage and grief and self-loathing until one day he decides it's his turn to take. He takes the torch to the stables of his former betrothed. He takes a noble man's heart with false oaths and pretty words. A noble woman's heart with false oaths and pretty words. He takes the world by storm, moulding it like wet sand to fulfill his every desire. When I finished the song, I offered the vampire a small bow. Throughout my entire performance, his gaze clung to me like a thorn, never once wavering from my body. What a wretched protagonist! You don't like it? It's one of my most requested tavern songs. Ah, how baffling to hear that human men find inspiration in an egocentric finale. There's a version of this song with a female protagonist. It's not always requested by men. Another unexpected revelation. Although I find the song's message disagreeable, I will concede that you sung it very well. Oh, I thank you. We lapse into a brief silence, not quite looking at each other. To my surprise, he's the one who speaks next. This estate, I often forgot what it's like to have more than the sound of my own thoughts, and of cicadas crying in the night. With nothing to interrupt the passage of immortality, silence can be maddening. How much do you earn at these taverns of yours? How many songs did it take for you to afford an instrument of that quality? How many songs? I never thought of it that way. It doesn't really work like that. I looked down at my lute, running my fingers over its surface. It was given to me, which means I never actually had to pay for it. But I don't need to share that with him. Sometimes I compose original songs on commission, which is more time-consuming but affords me more gold. As for crowd work, a classic in a well-stocked bar on a good night would net me several dozen coppers and a handful of gold. I suppose it amounts to 100 songs or so. If I combined the two, of course saving up for an artisan instrument would take even longer. Yes, 100 songs, you say. 100 songs of 100 nights, and I will ensure you have food, hygiene, and eventual safe passage from the estate. Hygiene? But if I'm clean, you'll want to suck my blood. Then you can be clean in the day and dirty yourself up in the night if it pleases you. Do what you will. His words hang in the air between us like a haze. Despite the numerous opportunities he's had to hurt me, he hasn't laid a hand on me all night. If my safety really is guaranteed, it's a tempting deal to take. Besides, it's not like I have many other options. Just some songs and you'll let me go? You won't try to steal my loot while I sleep? You take me for a common thief? How dare you? Such an appalling accusation when you can clearly see I still have all my fingers. The vampire raises his hand for me to see. The familiarity of the gesture is uncanny. It seemed to me that a powerful vampire like you can recover from serious wounds in an instant. You could once have been amputated at the elbow for all we know. And speaking of vampires, I seem to recall a legend that suggests your kind can't cross running water. Which means you can't leave the estate either, can you? I'm curious to know what crime you committed to be sent here. Enough. I await your song tomorrow. He stands to leave. Good night, sweet prince. Don't let the bedbugs bite, or I hope to see you in your nightmares. No, let's be sarcastic. Let's go with that one. Good night, sweet prince. Don't let the bedbugs bite. You realise I'm not going to sleep. I just no longer wish to be in your company. Then I hope the bedbugs do bite you. Keep speaking that way and there may be more biting than you bargained for, mortal. I clap my mouth shut. He strides to the nearest window. Like before, he erupts into mist and takes off into the night in the shape of a bat. But this time, he's left me with a half-finished plate of unsourced fish. Chapter 4. Harmonic Conversations. Do what you will, the vampire said. I was reluctant to believe it when he gave me free roam of the estate, but he's since made no move to impede me. I was allowed to wander wherever I pleased. I discovered little of note, just more books and the continued absence of dust. Nothing more suspicious than the errant scrap of paper from my first night. Despite my best efforts to distrust him, the vampire only appears to feed me some disgusting fish and claim his song. He stays long enough to make wry commentary sometimes, and small talk other times, but in physical proximity, he's given me a wide berth. Song, poof. He's polite enough, I suppose, and utterly uninterested in causing me harm. That was enough to move from a cobblestone bed to a cushioned one. The day soon blended together like the colours of sunset. Other than my fading bruises and brief performances, there's little to mark the passage of time. The monotony of our routine sways my feelings of weariness into restless puzzling. Questions swarm in my mind like locusts, and my aimless wandering doesn't yield enough fruit to feed them. I'd like to state my burning curiosity by interviewing my vampire, but I'm not sure how to approach him when he vanishes off after my song's final notes. Besides, I still have every reason to sleep with the fire iron wedged between the door handle. Every so often, I'm startled awake by blood-curdling screams. I ventured out from my room more than once, fire iron in hand, and my dagger in the other. I tracked the noise up the many flights of stairs, worried I would stumble upon the vampire feasting on an unlucky traveller who washed up the river. Then I would stand at the foot of his coffin for a time, waiting to hear signs of a struggle, waiting to see pools of blood oozing across the floor. But I always met with an eerie and moving silence. I went back to sleep with my bed pushed against the door each time, determined to keep out whoever or whatever was making those horrible noises. Although I'm sure I would have run into them by now if anyone else was living in the estate, one can never be too careful. Still, as harrowing as those noises have been, sleeping in an actual bed is incredible. I'm starting to feel pampered. The food still leaves much to be desired, but I have pillows, blankets, and the softest pelt carpet on my floor. A creepy estate is indubitably better than camping with stinky, surly guardsmen and sleeping on the ground. It's a hassle to shove my bed to and from the door, but I think it's a small price to pay. Brisk, invigorating air fills my lungs as I step into the courtyard. A shiver scuttles across my spine as I settle into dewy grass. I position my songwriting journal on my lap, having recently freed it from my clothes with some careful incisions. I always get lost in thought when I turn its pages. The act of deciding on a song makes my heart swell with calm contentment. After choosing one of my older pieces, a spirited melody I wrote when I was young, I wrap my lute over my shoulder and begin the practice. My performance occurred in crowded areas before I came here. I had to compete with the clamour of moving people, from passers-by to rancorous drunks. Here in the grass, I found myself not needing to fight for coin or attention. I could focus on my music and nature itself in my ensemble. I sing softly, timing my rhythm with the shifting trees and the gurgles of the moat. I like to imagine my notes, quiet though they are, carrying far into the forest, reverberating down mountains, performing without an audience. My pulse quickens, startled by the sudden noise. My fingers slip. The next drum is discordantly off key. I squint skywards, trying to make out shapes in the darkness. Reclined across a brick path fret overhead, the vampire stares down at me with his usual flat expression. I slam my journal shut and hide it behind my back. Did you mean to sneak up on me? You'll have to try harder than that if you want to catch me off guard. In an easy, soundless motion, the vampire drops to the ground like a falling feather. He saunters towards me, eyes glimmering like diamonds in the dark. I can assure you that if I were to try harder at such things, you would not wish to be the recipient of my attention. And I'll have you know that I was here first. Then I suppose I've disturbed you. I didn't mind. His reply was faster and more decisive than I anticipated. My heart hammers harder against my ribs. What is this? Fear? Am I really afraid of a speedy retort? Ridiculous. In a vain attempt to hide weakness, I hover my hand over my chest. No, I suppose you wouldn't mind a free ballad. Shouldn't you be hibernating in the rafters this time of night? I don't normally perform for another hour or two. Not tonight. He gestures to the night sky. The moon above us looks swollen, rounder and larger than I remember ever seeing it. Even so, is a mere full moon really so impressive? Part my lips to express my thoughts when a warm shadow inches across the moon's surface, spreading from its left side like a cocoon around a caterpillar. Soon the moon is as red as sunset, a glowing, rosy marble anchor in the night sky. A blood moon. A total lunar eclipse. It's the technical term, though you may call it what you like. It only occurs 3 times a year. People of Louvre insist that the blood moon is a bad omen, and seeing one during my travels was a foreboding sight. Yet, the vampire watches the moon with such earnest intensity, I fear his admiration for it is contagious. It's beautiful. What does it mean for you? Are you more powerful while it lasts? The vampire barks at a small, surprised laugh, and his eyes cut away from staring to glance at me. No, not at all. I simply... He folds his arms behind his back. I enjoy the view. The parapet is the best spot to observe the heavenly bodies in the sky. The ground is a close second. The vampire tilts his head, watching me with an expression I've never seen him wear before. Confused guilt? What is it? His hand twitches, ready to seize the dagger at my belt. Sorry, my hand twitches, ready to seize the dagger at my belt. I have been referring to you as Bard and Mortal all this time. I don't believe I ever asked for your name. Ah. I rest my hand over my lute, relaxing somewhat. You're right, we yelled at each other in the hall and never even introduced ourselves. You can call me... What can we call me? Not Abigail. Flame. Flame. Yes, it suits you. Thank you. Does it? He tells me enigmatically. You can call me Lucius. Lucius. His name weighs on my tongue like a stone. I never imagined myself learning it. With how often he's alluded to his immortality, it slipped my mind that he must have been a human man once. It's a humbling thought. Moreover, this is the longest amount of time we've spent without the distraction of music or bartering. He's even feeling affable enough to learn my name. I should try asking him questions. I may not get a better chance than this. Lucius, if I ask you some questions, will you insist on making it a barter? The vampire doesn't respond for a while. It depends on the question. I suppose that's fair. How about this? You don't have to answer a question if you don't want to. I can move on to the next one and we'll talk for as long as you're willing to entertain me. Ah, now that I'm the one entertaining you at the generous cost of nothing, what an amusing turn of events. I'm surprised you're so eager to talk to me. I believe you said something about the maddening silence of eternity. I began to understand what you meant. I see. Ask a question then, Flame. I will not ask for you to trade your possessions, but I may like to quell my own curiosity in exchange. He agreed. I wet my lips with anticipation. There's sometimes this noise. It sounds like screaming. That doesn't sound much like a question. I'll rephrase. What? The source of the noise will not hurt you. It is now your turn to answer my question. The haste with which Lucius changes the topic is unexpected, but not altogether unwelcome. It did sate my curiosity to a degree. Tell me something. As a bard, what do you know of the stars? A simple question leads to a comprehensive answer. Wise play, vampire. I observed the pinpricks of light above us, wrinkling in and out of the mauve cover of night. I don't remember the last time I relaxed enough to admire them. Before my arrival here, looking at the stars meant I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I needed to watch my own back, keep myself safe and alive. Though I sang of beauty and adventure, it seemed pointless to actually indulge in such things. I was far more focused on where I would lay my head or earn my next coin. How strange to be able to indulge in stargazing now with a vampire standing nearby. I trace different patterns in the sky, moving with practiced ease between each dot. The honed serpent always points north, even as its body shifts. Its tail will tell you where you've been and where you must go. Ah yes, the horned serpent. Anything else? It's harder to navigate using the others, but I know a few stories. The box-shaped cluster is the treasure trove of the goddess, Melandrinal. Supposedly it contains every possession humans have lost throughout their lives, and I draw my finger between the 7 brightest stars in the sky. That's the first king's crown. The stories say he bequeathed it to the heavens, an offering to the gods to keep his bloodline on the throne. It's actually funny. Luvia hasn't had a king in centuries, and it most certainly isn't his bloodline anymore. It seemed the gods played a nasty trick on him, huh? Lucius chuckles. It's such a low and abrupt sound that I lose my train of thought. They may have indeed. Flame, I may not know a story that you do not know. Shall I share it with you? I arch my eyebrows at that. Who says I don't know the story? You're being unfair, vampire, making me play guessing games? Lucius. Lucius, right. You're being unfair, Lucius. Then tell me this, Flame. Do you know the story of when the stars first appeared? There's a story behind that? Aside from the idea that each one was placed in the sky by the gods, I suppose I don't know this one after all. I knew it. Oh, don't gloat. Are you going to share the story with me or not? He lets out another low chuckle before he decides to continue. I suppose no one knows for certain how the stars were created, but one of my guests shared with me a tale from his homeland. Unlike the self-serving stories Alluvia dictates to its children, this kingdom believes that humans were not always a fixture in our realm. He believes that once, a very long time ago, the world existed in an endless night, a quiet, pitch-black quilt of eternity, unbroken by castle spires and bonfire smoke. When humans began to roam the earth, they would hold their newborns up to set the divine darkness. The stars above them, dotting the skies in peaceful, lonely world, were believed to befriend these infants and provide protection. The stars were there when we first arrived, and they will persist long after we are gone. That is what he believed. Thus, watching the night sky is when we are closer to glimpsing what is like at the beginning of the world and what we will be at its end. Oh gods, did your guest earn his freedom with this story? I would have given it to him, yes. His cryptic phrasing gives me pause, and Lucius falls quiet. His gaze remains transfixed on the sky. Meanwhile, I'm having trouble tearing my eyes from him and from the melancholic air he wears like a heavy cloth. I don't know how I could ever have missed it before, but I think that sadness has always been there. Hang on, go back. I skipped some in. Meanwhile, I'm having trouble... Oh no, it is there. I don't know how I could have missed it before, because I think that sadness has always been there. The more time I spend here, the harder it becomes to see him as the monster Alluvia led me to believe he was. Perhaps that's what makes him dangerous, or perhaps... I shiver again, rubbing my arms as a breeze whisks through my hair and clothes. Lucius turns promptly away from the sky, clicking his tongue at me. If you're cold, head inside. It will be challenging to play a lute with icicles for fingers. No, I'd like to stay out here a little longer. Monsters aren't supposed to watch the sky and tell you stories about where the stars came from. Monsters aren't supposed to spare your life and cook disgusting fish for you. The wrongness of my perception of him is eating away at me. I need to ask him my next question. Were you human once, Lucius? How... It doesn't take him long to pick up where I trailed off. How did I turn into this? No, He holds up his hand to stop me. He's not bothered by the exact phrasing of the question. I was human once, Flame, and in many ways I still am. You know, you're well aware of the standard method of vampiric infection, I'm sure. be bitten by one, mix their blood with your own. Then there's usually some manner of death or near-death experience, but then, voila, you're a ravenous immortal of the night. But I expect you're also aware that I was not created in the same way as others have been. I'm quite alive rather than undead, and I have no sire or coven to compel my allegiance. I'm not aware of that, but from his subtext I gathered that the blood-curdling screams aren't coming from another vampire. Good to know. Additionally, as I hope you noticed, I have not lost my mortality to bloodlust. It was your most likable trait during our wayward first meeting. Good. Catching himself as if he didn't mean to agree with me before he shakes it off. Just as humans have notable differences, not all vampires are the same. But the people of Alluvia are keenly familiar with the ferocity of vampire spawn, who routinely raid their homes and eat their children. I do not blame Alluvians for believing the worst of me by proxy, though I do find an occasional amusement in the things they say. Tell me, Flame, what tales are the good people spinning about me these days, or better yet, have you any theories of your own? Theories of my own? I don't think so. I've heard bits and pieces of vampire lore, but I've never felt the need to speculate. I'd never even seen a vampire before I met Lucius. There's all sorts of legends about you, but some were more akin to tall tales. People prefer to talk to you as a sort of ominous presence or a natural disaster. As for how you were created, as you say, one of the guardsmen who captured me, he believed you stole from the gods. Did I? I'm impressed with myself. How did I manage such a feat? They said you broke into the church's wine cellar and drank your fill. As punishment, the gods cursed you with a voracious appetite for the blood of your own people. I've said before that I'm not a thief, but overindulging in wine does sound like something I do. I've always had a fondness for reds. Any other thoughts? What happens when a man mates with a bat? Or you dealt with demons? What happens when a man mates with a bat? I beg your pardon? Okay, that wasn't specifically about you, it's just something I've overheard in a tavern. But since you do turn into a bat, I thought the idea had some merit. They were talking about how vampires are born after a man, you know. Implying my poor father took common animals to bed. He will be rolling in his grave tonight. But perhaps you're not far off the truth. My mother had her bestial moments. Oh my, what an astonishing thing to say about one's own mother. You've tricked me into another guessing game, you know. Are you going to tell me the truth, or will you keep goading me into recite absurd theories? His white fangs gleam when he smiles, reflected against the starlight. Why, if I reveal all my secrets now, I fear there would be no riveting banter left to pass the time. We wish to stay the hand of the maddening science for as long as we can, do we not? Fine, we do. Maybe I can ask you about simpler things. I retrieved a small charcoal scrap I found my first night of exploring, holding it for him to see. I found this under some curtains. What can you tell me about it? Is that... Lucius moves towards me and halts mid-step. His hands linger in the air between us as if the scrap is a loaf of bread and he hasn't had a meal in weeks. The intensity of his reaction compels me to stand in turn. After a moment of hesitation, I gently set it into his palm. Lucius practically cradles the scrap, his fingers passing reverently over the smudged charcoal. I just thought I was being helpful by tidying up a spot you missed. I was going to tease you about it. You actually recognize it? I do. His demeanour has completely changed, almost to an unrecognisable degree. His stooped shoulders don't resemble the rigid, dry, humid vampire I've come to know. Then again, I hadn't taken the time to know him until tonight. He breathes out with a shuddering difficulty as if his lips had gone dry, but slowly he begins to speak again. I ripped it to shreds one night. I was so angry back then. The night I arrived? No, this was a very long time ago. This was a portrait of somebody I once knew. I shake my head when he starts to hand the scrap back to me. You need to give it back, Lucius. You don't need to give it back, Lucius. It was yours to begin with. Unless you ripped the drawing because you hate the person depicted, do you not want it anymore? Lucius avoids my eyes, though he tucks his scalp carefully in his pocket, the scrap carefully in his pocket. A pointed question. Humans really do prefer black and white thinking, don't they? He refers to me by my mortality again rather than my name. It's complicated then, a sore subject? Yes. His snappy tone makes me flinch, but I hold my ground and refuse to let it show. Because how can hatred persist in a vacuum of eternity? Once anger is finished, ransacking what remains of your soul, all that's left is... exhaustion? Lucius narrows his eyes at me. How would you know such a thing? I gave him an innocent little shrug. I'm not ready to change the topic to myself because I find myself genuinely wanting to know more about him. Lucius regards me for a while longer, tapping his finger against his collarbone, before he relents with a sigh. I saw no reason to keep this secret from you. The portrait depicts the remaining monarch who exiled me here over 300 years ago, Her Majesty Hildegard Edgehaven. Oh! I suspected we'd both been punished by members of the royal family, but to have it confirmed? My mind races and I bite my lip. I don't want to upset him any further with a poorly timed question. Carry on asking wherever you like, Flame. Within reason, I will indulge your curiosity. My question burst from me like water from a long-suffering dam. How did you come upon such a portrait? I hear it's illegal to depict the faces of the royal family in common artwork. Just having one in your possession, it's an open act of rebellion, isn't it? His lips lift on one side, taking on a smug edge. I'm well aware. What further punishment do you think the current crown can bestow upon me if they find out? Perhaps they will banish me to a different estate? Or perhaps they'll stop sending me guests, hoping in vain they'll dry up like a prune from the lack of blood and attention. To answer your question, I described her face to an artist from memory. So you've seen her, you know her from before. What did you do to Queen Hildegard? Did you break into her wine cellar? Or were you her former lover? She exiled you when she caught you in bed with another? Disgusting, no. We were never thus involved. Besides, I preferred to take one partner at a time. Juggling two seems taxing at best. But based on your logic, on what you said when you met me, you must have committed a crime so deeply grievous, utterly heinous to have been sent here. Am I wrong? It's been a long time since I felt like I was sitting in a confessional booth. I didn't miss the glint of amusement that dances around the otherwise unflappable features. What of you, I did ask you first, as you said, and all this time I have been dying to know what unforgivable crime you committed. Oh, I've made a vampire feel like he's dying. Quite a feat on my part. I sneeze. You really must be getting indoors. Come, I'll walk with you. You'll not be beset by distant screams while I am by your side. Yes, all right. Let's get indoors. How about a hint, then? Hint about what? You're still thinking about it? You are insatiable. It's one of my most charming personality traits. Come on, let's trade hints about why we're here, what crimes we committed. Will you go first? I'll go first. He seems satisfied with that, though he already decides to occupy his hands with a cleaning cloth. I watch him clean every surface he touches like a whirlwind of sanitation. He tends to settle into one of the various lounge chairs during our nightly performances, but without the backdrop of my music, I notice he seldom likes to hold still. Well, I'm waiting on you. I'm waiting on your hint. I haven't come up with a hint yet. Glance down my Luton songwriting journal, trying to remember what it was like when I first held them in my hands. I remember how jealous the other girls were when our overseers chose to train me as an entertainer. It was a coveted position, and I was so proud. I remember the crushing disillusionment when I realised they would never allow me to play or to speak freely, the strict, flexible lessons where they rapped my knuckles with a cane for the slightest mistake. I remember how I swore that day. I'll say and do whatever the hell I wanted, damn the consequences. You already know that I have a dodge penchant of speaking my mind, Lucius. I grew up in a stifled home where the attitude was deeply discouraged. Once I broke free of them, I didn't want to hold myself back. I was drawn to everything I couldn't do while I was growing up. I wanted to see the world, and I did. There are times I've been relentless, unreasonable and careless, all in the name of acting freely. It's gotten me into trouble more than once. Being sent here is the latest in a long line of consequences I've brought upon myself. I see, you grew up among people who wanted to break your spirit and punish you when you did not bend. The stifling home you describe sounds a lot like an alluvian one. You have so much in common with the children here. More than you know. A bit inside my cheek, taking a moment to weigh my options. As far as I can tell, he has been honest with me. Should I not be honest with him in turn? Lucius, I'm from here. I'm from Alluvia. What? So you do know of all of the Alluvians' beliefs and customs, yet the way you act and carry yourself is in spite of them? Ha! Seems you are both rather insolent, you and I, though they should have given you credit for turning out as entertaining as you did. I don't act this way to spite them, not intentionally. I ran away at a young age and haven't returned in years. I suppose I've shred what little Alluvian manners I had. But if we left to see the world, why in heaven did you come back? Don't you now owe me a hint? A hint. He echoes me, folding his arms in front of his chest. He finally ceased cleaning, or perhaps ran out of things to clean, and had settled into his usual velvet chase. A hint about what I did to end up here? Lucius aims his face at the ceiling, as if he could see the stars through it if he stared hard enough. I don't think I did anything wrong, Flame. You don't? After I made myself vulnerable, I told him where I'm from and detailed the shortcomings of my personality. The nerve! What does that even mean? You don't think you did anything wrong. How does that qualify as a hint? That doesn't. I falter as I notice that Lucius isn't arguing with me or even looking my way. Will you play me the song you were practicing outside, Flame? I fear we do not have all the time in the world, or we'll be forced to return to my coffin before long. Forced? You say as if you can't sleep in a bed with the curtains drawn shut. I wish, if I could, I clearly miss sleeping in a bed. Wait, you actually can't sleep in a bed? Why not? Questions, questions. So despite his gripping, Lucius did not leave me in suspense. Vampires prone to compulsions. Universally, they cannot enter one's home without an invitation, and they cannot set foot across running water. I hear some vampires are even compelled to count spilled seed and grain, or to cut the holes in a fishing net. I have an additional compulsion. A curse, courtesy of Her Majesty Hildegard Edgehaven. When she had me exiled, she also used sorcery to bind me to a coffin. I cannot stay far from it, at least my insides twist upon themselves, strangling me from within. The first night I resisted the coffin's call and slept in a separate chamber. I awoke vomiting blood. Naturally, this is far from ideal. I need to retain all the blood I have. You asked me if I hated the subject in the portrait. Well, while it's true that my anger has faded into exhaustion, I do still find her abominable. She knew how I despise tight spaces. Oh God, Lucius, that's terrible. Terrible enough for us to move on to your nightly performance. Yes, of course, forgive me. I clear my throat, brushing my fingers over my neck. What are you doing now? Is that where you'd like me to bite you? I yank my hand away from my neck as if I touched a hot pan. Lucius! I jest. If I bite you there, you would die from blood loss. Though, I would bite you if you asked it of me. Are you certain that you're not interested in eternal life? Yes, keep talking like a man who no longer wants to hear a song. Lucius raises his hands in surrender, although I catch a sight of his shoulders still quaking with amusement.